So last time I introduced community for brands, and then I got rudely interrupted by myself, so let's finish talking about it. Byron Sharp's famous book, How Brands Grow, talks about mental availability. This refers to how much space the brand occupies in a person's mind. These brands are more likely to grow and succeed if they hold a lot of this space. By fostering a community, you can do this. You will occupy that space, reducing the likelihood of those people considering competitors. Again, this emphasizes the two-way relationship that brands and communities can benefit from. Though it's not just fans in the communities that can support your marketing, but influencers too. Influencer marketing is when businesses collaborate with social media influencers and/or celebrities to endorse, review, and create awareness about their brand and products. The idea is to increase brand exposure through a word-of-mouth format. As I mentioned before, people trust people more than brands. In fact, over 90% of people trust peers, friends, and family more than they do with online reviews and ratings. It's this idea of trust that forms the basis of influencer marketing. It works because influencers have an existing following. They may not hold interest in the brand, depending on which influencers you choose, but the important takeaway of this is that they have an audience. When an influencer endorses a product or brand, not only does it make that audience aware, but it may potentially generate leads. If someone sees their favorite influencer endorsing a product, they might think, oh, it must be good, or they have that item, so I should get it too if I want to be like them. There is often a fear of missing out, or FOMO as you might call it, within online communities, and influencers can have a significant impact on a person's aspirations. This may appear in the form of parasocial relationships, usually a one-sided relationship where someone has an emotional attachment to an online personality. This can be fairly harmless, where some consumers will hold a deep level of trust with the influencer, wanting to be like them or wanting them to have similar opinions. At this level, you can take advantage of the personal relationships people have. Other times, we can simplify the endorsement. Even placing a logo or such in a social media post can have a level of subconscious awareness. It's a sort of psychological recognition. Pairing that with a trusted influencer then creates a positive perception of that product or brand. There are several levels of an influencer basing on the size of their following and community. Each act as aspirational reference groups, as individuals will often be admired even if they are not fully known, but will be used as a way to appeal to consumers. An example of this marketing can be found in sponsored segments like in YouTube videos. Businesses will pay influencers to basically put an ad in a section of their video, usually saying, this video is sponsored by blah blah blah, thanks to blah 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 for sponsoring this video. When I thought about different sponsorships I'd seen when looking at gaming videos, there was one game that I remember coming up a lot. And if you've been doing the same, you've probably heard of a game called Raid Shadow Legends. Created by publisher Plarium, the main marketing strategy of this game was through paid promotions and influencer marketing to spread awareness of the game to different audiences. The result of this is that it helped create interest in a way that didn't seem too intrusive. I even found a playlist of 119 videos that were all sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Some of those videos I had seen myself. After all, those videos are how I heard about the game in the first place.
Before I get into this, you're probably wondering how I'm able to afford such massive purchases, and that's because today's video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. If you don't know what Raid Shadow Legends is, you've obviously not been on the internet in the last few months.
Find out after this brief message from Quackity.
Thanks to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. It is thanks to them that I am able to produce content like this and give back to you guys for supporting the channel. Now, what actually is Raid Shadow Legends?
So while Twitch chat's doing that, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is a turn-based RPG done right, and to be honest, I don't normally play mobile games, but I've actually really genuinely enjoyed this.
But first, a quick message from our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. I'm gonna need you to get everything you know about mobile games and just forget about it, because Raid Shadow Legends is changing everything.
Another way of using influencers is by inviting them to create content on your game or playing the game at events. For instance, Final Fantasy XVI ran a campaign that asked influential creators to play that game at specific moments to encourage community discussion, as well as reach and engage new audiences. They used 25 creators who are new to the franchise to do this, earning 31 pieces of content, 250,000 organic watched hours on Twitch, 928,000 organic YouTube views, and a whole lot of other stats you can see on screen because I'm not reading these all out. While the game sales as a whole fell short of developer Square Enix's expectations, the game was able to sell 3 million copies in its first week. Similarly, Overwatch has built a community from its creators in multiple ways. The first is to run Twitch drops, where viewers can earn in-game items by just watching an influencer for a set amount of hours. This encourages the audience to engage with the game in and out of playing it. Alternatively, the game invites its influencers to events. This includes inviting them to game tournaments, to the company headquarters, or to annual conventions. They care for the influencers because they know they have an impact on the community and therefore creating a positive image of the brand. Because let's face it, everyone wants to be invited as a guest if it involves a game they love. And as influencers, they spread that positive experience to their audience, which then builds a positive perception of the brand. But there's a danger to relying on the community and influencers. If something happens to damage an influencer's reputation, it can reflect badly on the brand who associates with them. Any scandal, no matter who is involved, can affect the other party. Even then, some consumers may simply not trust what an influencer says. A study in 2023 from The Drum found that nearly 90% of consumers no longer trust influencers. In fact, it's the endorsement through other consumers like them, such as with user-generated content, that has a greater impact than influencers do. It goes back to this idea of a community made of people with similar interests. The community has power in the marketing process. They might see an influencer being sponsored or advertising a product and may think they're just doing it for the money. A consumer may not trust that an influencer is genuinely liking the item they are promoting. So that's why it's important to make sure the influencer you choose has a genuine interest in whatever game you're making and has an audience that would have one too. As a business, you can also work with the influencer to make authentic content that is genuine and engaging, that it benefits all involved. But with that being said, you retain authenticity if you let that influencer have some control, because they are the one that best understands their audience. They will create original, engaging content with effective messaging. This marketing works because people trust people more than brands. How many times do I have to say it? So if we focus so much on our community, it might seem like we're alienating new customers. For a business to be successful, they can't just target everyone. So it's inevitable that you're going to focus on a specific group and aim all the benefits of your brand to them. I mentioned about alienating my diversity video, and that sometimes if you focus too much on one audience, it can make other people feel like they don't belong in that community. If a game's community has been established for a long time, it becomes an association with the brand itself. This sense of belonging is important in community, to feel valued, but if you don't feel it, you're not going to build that positive connection with the brand. Instead, you'll feel disconnected. The thing with games is that they don't always work the same as usual products in our day-to-day lives. Most games are welcoming for everyone to play. I mean, say you go to a shop and you see things like men's running shoes, baby milk, or ladies' sanitary products. Each of these items have a target audience. You can probably guess who pretty quickly. But if you think of just a game in general, there's no specific answer. It depends on what the game is about. It doesn't really matter about the function of the game, because if that game is on every modern console, for example, there's not really limitations to who can use it. There's no real games for boys or games for girls, because that's simply based on the associations the brand makes for the game, rather than what they were functionally intended for. When it comes to products like baby milk, you're not going to have the general audience buying it because they don't actually have a use for it. Games work the same way as other entertainment mediums like film. There might be an age rating that's just based on suitable content. There's nothing stopping a 32-year-old from playing a game that's rated 12. Again, there's no actual functional limitations to most games. So going back to the alienation of customers, making a community is good, but it's up to the brand to show it is open to everyone. You can target an audience in your marketing, but when it comes to your community, you can make it broader. Say if you're picking influencers for sponsorships. Of course you want an audience that will have an interest, but ultimately, there's no reason to exclude different demographics from playing your game. If they have a strong, passionate community, what's the harm in widening the scope a little? Game communities are huge, and fostering brand loyalty is a good, beneficial thing. But if you think that running events is such a part of engaging communities, it can potentially be costly. Events alone can take extra time and planning. I mean, you might need teams outside of marketing and game development to set up these projects, but which aren't always achievable if you're a small indie company. That is why pre-launch communities are especially important, such as with Undertale, because they build a good foundation for word of mouth and game sales, but long term, you kind of want to bring in new people. If you release a new game, you can't just rely on the sales from your community, people who know you. That limits growth and ultimately can lead your community to get tired of your games, especially if you're releasing the same formula to please them, to give them what they like. Community engagement is important, there's no doubt. I mean, it costs 5 times more to acquire a new customer than to retain an old one. But a lot of that research comes from general mass-produced products. If you're a business with your product on a store shelf, you already get awareness just by people looking at your item as they walk by. Selling games isn't that simple. If you want to continue to be relevant, you have to keep attracting new people. It's a reason why games like Pokemon Go and Among Us not only built communities, but thrived for many years, because they brought in so many people that didn't usually play those type of games, or play games in general. They still retain communities. They don't seem the same level of popularity and virality they had, because there's less newer customers coming in. Though there can be an issue with relying on newer customers over people who retain a genuine interest. It is difficult. There are people who try the game out for a while and then later never play again. And some people in the community can lose interest in playing, especially if they don't find anything new of value to them, so you have to bring in new people to cover those losses. Developing unique games that change the formula is risky, and you could alienate your own community doing so. With many other things in marketing, I believe there should be a balance. We shouldn't neglect newer customers and understand that they are fundamental to achieving higher sales. But community engagement is so important, and so is brand loyalty. You might have creative campaigns, big data, and new technologies, but if you don't have an authentic relationship with your customers, you're going to be forgotten. People in communities buy the next game in the series because they have an appreciation for the IP. Over time, there's been a level of trust created with these games that they are good, high quality, fun to play, etc. And that's because fans keep talking about them. If you don't have that loyalty, who's going to talk about your games? Not me! You might have someone look at a new game and say, oh, that looks nice, and that's where it ends. But if someone responds to that with, I love that game, it's really good, well, that response might be the reason for a potential sale. If you haven't got tired of me saying it, authenticity and trust are so prevalent here. They are such important parts of marketing and will be in the future. Community is a big foundation for that, because there's a lot of people playing these games. They might not know each other personally, but it feels good to know you're not alone. Sorry, that was pretty cheesy.